Mondo cool! That's right, boys. Mondo cool.
Nier is an action-adventure RPG that takes place in a parallel universe to the world of the Drakengard series. With that in mind, there is no need to play any of the Drakengard games, as they are very loosely connected. This game was published by Square Enix and developed by Cavia. Nier takes place in our world, post-apocalyptic, 1,312 years after said apocalypse. As such, the game effectively gives off a very familiar, but at the same time alien feeling in its setting. The game follows our titular character Nier, a father who cares very deeply for his daughter Yona. At first, the game just seems like it's about curing poor Yona of her disease. However, as the game progresses, there's so much more here than meets the eye. Very typical of the director Yoko Taro, not that that's any slight against him by any means. The story of Nier is tragic, and at times heartbreaking. I'm not ashamed to admit that this was one of the very few and only games to have ever brought me to tears. Quite an accomplishment. This is due in no small part to my connection to the cast of characters. They're so wonderfully written that I couldn't help but fall in love with each of them. Grimoire Weiss, whose name shall not be abbreviated, is an incredibly witty, well-spoken, and charming book. Kaine, on the other hand, is a rude and crude, but ultimately sad and pitiable soul, while Emile is kind-hearted and innocent, yet continuously and unfairly burdened by things beyond his control, despite his earnestness. However, what truly makes this game tragic and something very special in my eyes is your second playthrough. This is very important. You must play Nier a second time at the very least. The second playthrough consists of cutscenes and dialogue, not present in the first playthrough. Now, this is actually a playthrough of the last third of the game. You're not actually playing through the entire game from start to finish again, so it's not nearly as daunting as it seems when I say the second playthrough. Regardless, these new cutscenes and dialogue drastically alter your perception of certain events. I won't delve too deep into it for the sake of not spoiling anything. However, situations you may have perceived to have been very black and white are anything but. You may have even felt altruistic in certain instances. It is your ignorance that causes you to believe that. This ties in very nicely with the game's theme of how society justifies your actions for you. It's okay because society says it's okay, right? Or is it? Well, that's up to you to decide after playing this game. Now, the story isn't perfect. I think certain things, such as the full extent of what the shades are capable of and how they are formed, should have been delved into more deeply, as sometimes it just feels like they're able to do certain things or become certain things for the sake of convenience. This also ties in with how I felt certain things needed more explanation in general than what we were given. However, these complaints really do little in taking away from the wonderfully written story and characters of Nier, and is easily the game's greatest strength. Visually, this game's not going to impress anyone. I would have to say that the visuals are easily this game's greatest weakness. While the art direction is good, and I do like the designs, the raw technical prowess of the visuals are sorely lacking, and probably could have been passed off as a PS2 game. The shadowing effects in particular are just ugly and ruin some cutscenes from time to time. While I do like the designs, like I said earlier, character models don't really bring out that art style as well as it should. Suffice to say, this is an ugly game, but at the very least, it plays well. There were very few moments where the game slowed down, but thankfully it wasn't too often. And I value playability much more than visuals. Voice work in this game is really good. Some really great voice actors lend their talent here. I was particularly surprised and even moved by the performances of Laura Bailey as Kaine and Liam O'Brien as Weiss, who portrayed their respective characters excellently. Jamison Price as the main character also should get a mention, as he did a great job of supplying our protagonist with a deep and rich voice. However, what really steals the show is the soundtrack. I may have mentioned this before in my previous videos more than once, but it bears repeating. This is my favorite soundtrack of all time, of any video game, and probably of any other medium. There is not a hint of hyperbole or insincerity in this statement. I am truly honest when I say this. This is the most emotional, moving, and beautiful soundtrack I have ever heard. I implore everyone to look up songs from the game such as Shadow Lord, Gods Bound by Rules, and Ashes of Dreams, and I assure you that you will feel the emotions of these songs even without playing the game. The one flaw I can levy against the soundtrack is more so the game's implementation of it. Sadly, certain tracks get overused because the game has you going to so many of the same location over and over again, and as a result you may get tired of these specific songs. Very unfortunately, a song I used to like a lot, Hills of Radiant Winds, I can no longer enjoy. Such a shame, and is by no means a fault of the soundtrack itself. Nier is very Zelda inspired. In fact, the game is so self-aware of this fact that it goes out of its way to reference it more than once. In the game, you can explore, fight monsters, level up, and upgrade weapons. It's all pretty standard stuff though, to be honest. There's rarely ever a reason to actually go out and explore the world, as it's pretty tiny. The melee combat is your standard fare with not much substance, although it is kind of fun, admittedly. And the weapon upgrading, well, that actually really sucks, because the conditions are too ridiculous to actually bother with it. Neither is the game even really difficult enough to where you need to rely on it, as I very rarely upgraded any of my weapons. What does stand out, however, is the magic system. With Grimoire Vice, you can use a decent variety of spells to fight off enemies. The spells are not only fun to use, but they're actually pretty unique. They range from giant hands punching enemies, spears you can chuck as projectiles, or barriers that protect you as well as damage enemies. The magic system does a fairly decent job of spicing up the gameplay, just enough so that it isn't boring. The gameplay, however, is not this game's strong point. Not by a long shot. Aside from the weapon upgrade, which is nearly pointless, and the magic system, which is pretty good, the gameplay itself is mostly standard. Thankfully, at some point in the game, you do gain access to more weapon types, and this does help break up the gameplay a bit, but not by a whole lot. The game plays well enough to get by, and it can be pretty fun at times, especially during the boss fights, which are really epic, and are clearly the most memorable moments in the game gameplay-wise. But with that in mind, I would say that it's not the game's real focus. This review may have come off a bit mixed, but please don't misunderstand, as I fucking love Nier. It's just my love for the game doesn't blind me from its faults. Some parts of the story did need some fleshing out. The game is fucking ugly graphically. Despite the amazing soundtrack, some songs are needlessly overplayed, and again, the weapon upgrade system sucks. All that aside, the writing is phenomenal. The story is great, with interesting characters and well-presented themes. The characters are vivid and three-dimensional. The dub is very well voiced. The soundtrack is pure brilliance. The magic system is really fun and unique, and the boss fights are awesome. This game is definitely not going to be for everyone. Some of these flaws are going to be too much for some. However, for those who are willing to look past these issues, will find that this is a truly unforgettable experience. This has been Shintai, folks. Take it easy. Hey everyone, this is Shintai's shameless self-promotion. Nothing but shame going around here. Today I did a review of Nier, which was requested by Life Is There to Be There. That's quite the existential name you got there, buddy. Well, I hope you enjoyed the review. Now, since I'm all about themes and all that good shit, Drakengard 3, it's made by the same people that made Nier, and I fucking love these guys. They're so rough around the edges, but man, do they put all their heart and soul into making their games. You gotta respect that, even if you don't like their games. And over here, we got a pile of shit. Oni-Chanbara Bikini Samurai Squad. I kept saying Zombie Squad for whatever reason. And the reason that's up there is because that was another request. And fuck that game, and again, fuck Lord Chaos for recommending it. Blech. Never know how to end these. So bye.